Hello, everyone. Another episode of Voices for the Future. I'm your co-host, Michael Wayne, with my co-host, Anodea Judith. Hi, Anodea.
And great to be in this seat instead of the
Anodea
seat.
Anodea gets to sit in the hot seat today and be interrogated. Questioned by me. I'll shine the bright light on you, Anodea, and get you to spill the beans. Great. Okay, so a little bio. And Anodea is talking, the emails went out, but the subject that we're talking about is She Rises, Awakening Our Female Archetypes of Empowerment. So Anodea Judith, PhD, is a globally recognized author and teacher who has written 9 books on psychology, spirituality, and social change, including Wheels of Life, Eastern Body, Western Mind, and The Global Heart Awakens. She teaches worldwide on a variety of topics, and her online courses have reached 163 countries. That's almost every country in the world. She holds a master's in clinical psychology and a doctorate in mind-body health. Throughout her life, she's worked with archetypes of all time, and she hopes the awakening of feminine archetypes of leadership help to bring much-needed balance to our world. And I can say to that, amen. And Anodea's website is anodeajudith.com, and I'll put that in the box. And the website for the She Rises is sherisescards.com, and we'll put that in the chat box somewhere along the line. All right, so Anodea, welcome, thank you, and what a great project, an ambitious project. It's a set of 38 illustrated cards depicting various archetypes of empowerment for women. So what's the genesis of this? How did this come to be?
Well, Michael, I didn't plan on doing this. As most people know, I've been, my passion has been evolution and also the chakras and personal growth and healing. And I have always served the feminine. And, as a therapist, I studied archetypes all my life. Archetypal psychology, a la C.G. Jung. And then I was ordained as a priestess in 1985. And at that time, I learned, I was given permission to take power in a way that was distinctly feminine. In other words, I didn't have to act like a man to take power. I could do something that was more intrinsic to my nature. So that was something that really set off some bells in me. And then in 2005, I was in a living room with a friend who was working on a book on archetypes of feminine leadership and how women lead differently than men, and we need different archetypes to guide us. And so that, we don't do it the same, but people don't recognize these forms of women's leadership. They're just not in the culture. They're not in the mindset. And then that kind of went underground. I wasn't really doing much with this. But in 2016, when Hillary Clinton, who was one of the most qualified candidates we had had in a long time, lost to what I consider one of the most unqualified candidates that we had had in a long time. Not only that, a measly liar and many other things we could say. I knew, and I saw the comments that were made about Hillary that didn't really have to do with her qualifications. Oh, there's just something about her. Oh, she's a nasty woman. Oh, she's too masculine. Oh, she doesn't have what it takes to be commander in chief. And I saw this about other women politicians and leaders. It's just something that people are uncomfortable. And I realized what an unholy choice a woman has in that position, that she really has to, she has the choice of either acting like a man, and then she's accused of being nasty and rude and too abrasive and all sorts of characteristics that if a man did those, no one would care. So she gets criticized for that, or she acts like, quote unquote, a woman, more feminine, and they say, well, she doesn't have what it takes. She doesn't have the power to be commander in chief. And I realized that we will never have women leaders in any great number until we understand that women lead differently than men, and they need different archetypes to guide them.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you're so right. And the misogyny hurled at Hillary Clinton was terrible. And the same thing with our current vice president, Kamala Harris, the
Right.
same thing. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah. And that reminds me, when you were talking about that, I had a memory in 2016, after the election. I was out of the country, flew back in after the election, late November, flew into JFK, and I had my car parked offside, and I had to take a cab to get there. And the cab driver was of African descent, and he was talking to me saying, and we got into talking about the election. And he said, yeah, you need a strong man to run a country. You can't, a woman belongs at home. And I thought, oh, I wasn't going to engage in that, but I thought, oh, what an archetype of a male archetype on that.
It's very, very deep seated. And sometimes I think sexism goes even deeper than racism. I mean, given we've had a black president before we had a woman president,
Mhm.
slaves were given the right to vote before women were given the right to vote. So, there's been, and racism and sexism both go very deep in the culture.
Mhm.
And while women have made many strides over the last decades, we earn more money and we have more positions of power, but in the area of leadership, they haven't progressed very far. And I just want to address this with, sharing different types of leadership models for women, some of which are ancient, like the priestess or the midwife, or um, the maiden mother crone, or the spinner, the weaver, and the cutter, which are the three fates, some of which are emerging, like the activist and the trailblazer and the benefactress. I mean, women never had a chance to be a benefactor before because they didn't have any money.
Mhm.
But now that there's some women coming into wealth, we're finding that women are more generous with their wealth than men are by a long shot.
Mhm. Yeah. And it seems the World Happiness Report, that's put out every year by the UN, the countries that rate the highest, many of them have women as the leaders.
That's right.
So I don't think that's a coincidence.
And many of the countries that did better during COVID had lower cases were run by women.
Uh-huh. That's right. Yeah.
But among 193 countries, there are only 23 that have a woman head of state, and that is 23 as of yesterday. The day before that was 22, and this is because the president of Peru tried a coup, and a coup attempt, and he didn't get away with it, and he got arrested, and he got kicked out of office, and his vice president is now president, and it's a woman. So for the first time ever, Peru has a woman head of state, but she wasn't elected. She was, by dint of his corruption, she stepped
Mhm.
in. So now it's
Yeah.
23, but that's still a very, very small percentage out of 193 countries. And in a couple other stats on that, only 3 have legislature or cabinets that have 50% women on them.
Oh, oh.
So we have a long way to go.
Yeah. And you cite some other statistics about Fortune 500 companies, only 7.7.5% have female CEOs, and
That's right. And
women
yet,
have.
There's a study by the S&P Global Market. They studied 6,000 companies over 17 years, and they found that the companies that have more women on the board of directors are more profitable, have better stock performance, have less employee turnover, and so they
Hmm.
actually fare better.
Hmm. Yeah. And so how or why or how do you think women lead differently than men? And why do they need different archetypes to guide them, different archetypes than men?
Yeah, so the male archetype of leadership that we think of is very dynamic, very commanding. He's very certain of himself. He tells other people what to do. And it's really based, you could say, psychologically or in the archetypal thinking of the collective conscious on a general that can lead men into battle. And that's where the model of leadership came from. And then we have that applied to CEOs, and we have that applied to heads of state, and we have that applied to somebody that runs a hospital or somebody that's a university president. We think that they have to have those characteristics. And if they are compassionate, if they are gentle, if they are quiet, well, even look at, Joe Biden, for example, who is a very compassionate president, and he's getting a lot done, but his oratory style is more gentle and soft
Mhm.
spoken, and people don't resonate with it because it's not what they think should be a leader, right?
Uh-huh.
And so we're really stuck in these, what I would call stereotypes, which is an archetype that isn't complete, that doesn't have its full masculine, feminine, light, and shadow. And
Hmm.
some of the ways women lead are different. Like one of the cards in the deck, and I'll call her up for a moment, is the shepherdess. And I have her kind of leading people, but here's some sheep. And she gathers, she leads from the rear. Now, we wouldn't think of um, a leader being somebody that is the one that makes sure everybody is taken care of, that
Uh-huh.
makes sure everyone gets a call back, gets the notes to the meeting, or the one in the school that this is the student that's lagging behind. So there's someone that sees to that student. That's a very important role in any organization. And
Hmm.
yet it's not seen as a leadership role, but it's one of the ways women lead. In one circle that I was doing, a woman drew that card in workplace. She says, "Oh my God, I've been doing this all my life. I didn't realize it. I'm always the one that is making sure everybody's taken care of, that they have a cup of tea, that they're warm enough, that, they've got a call back." It's very important, and yet we don't value that.
Hmm.
So that's just one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of something else that came to my attention when I wrote my book, just on what you're saying, Anodea. When Adam Smith, who's considered the father of capitalism, even though he's not, and that's a whole nother story, but he wrote The Wealth of Nations. He was able to write his book because he lived with his mother. He was in his, I think, 40s by then. He decided he wanted to write this book, so he left his job, moved in with his mother. She cooked for him, she fed him, she tended to everything, and he never like acknowledged, and he never understood how important her role was. So there never was that connection. It was very disconnected. He didn't realize the importance of the work she did. There's no tangible dollar value on it, but it was so important for him, and he never would have been able to write his book, for better
That's
or
right.
worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so women have been doing these roles for centuries, but not getting any credit for it. But there's certain skills that they develop in that. I mean, even the mother, she was the first leader any of us ever knew.
Mhm.
She taught us, how to tie our shoelaces and how to hold a fork and, how to play with our friends and do our homework. And, she was the first leader any of us knew. And if you put mother on your resume when you're looking for a job, that's kind of frowned upon. And in fact, when someone becomes a mother, all the first thought is, what's going to happen to my career? I'm going to have a period where I'm not working, I won't get rehired. And yet it's one of the best trainings for a leader that there is.
Uh-huh.
How to wear multiple hats and run the.
Uh-huh.
And it is a training.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask you to define the word archetype for anyone who doesn't understand. I know Carl Jung was, talked about the archetypes, but perhaps you could just say a little bit to segue into, the work with archetypes you're doing.
Yeah, so arche means first, so original, and typo or type meant a blow, and what they meant was a blow of a hammer when they were, smelting metal to make a mold, right? So
Mhm.
it's sort of like the first mold out of which something is cast. And so it's a general category, like mother is an archetype. And if I say mother, we all know what I'm talking about. And yet,
Mhm.
your mother and my mother would have been different. Somebody might have a cruel mother or a gentle mother or a busy mother or an absent mother or an alcoholic mother. There's different kinds, and the archetype has many different expressions, but there's a general category that we can all recognize. And when I say maiden, we know what a maiden is, but, you know, they're all different shapes and sizes and characters. Um, and so or even a cat, there's a lot of different kinds of cats, but we know a cat when we see one and we say, yes, that's a cat. So that's an archetype. And
Uh-huh.
Jung felt that archetypes really govern our behavior, and we don't
Uh-huh.
necessarily know it. They're hidden, and they're shapes that are given to us by the culture. So, the archetype of masculine and feminine, for example, when you're a little boy, you're raised to be a certain way. Don't cry. You're given this kind of toys. Little girls, has permission to cry, but she doesn't have permission to be angry. She's given a different kind of toys. These are archetypal principles that train us to think and behave in a certain way. And it's
Mhm.
very, very hard to break out of them because we don't recognize power or leadership or capability, sometimes in different forms than we've been taught to believe.
Mhm. So with archetypes, I mean, you've in developing these cards like a roadmap, but how would is it a person would have one archetype, like you mentioned, mother or healer or whatever, or they could have a few archetypes, and do they embody that, or they express that?
Well, I have a certain order of the cards, and like when you buy the set, they're placed in a certain order, and they start with the spinner, who is the first of the three fates. She begins things. And the first set of archetypes are more singular, like they're one archetype. And the spinner spins the thread. It's a single thread. So a mother might be just totally into her motherhood, focused on a brand new baby. When you have a brand new baby, that's all you do. The
Mhm.
lover might be totally obsessed with her relationship. A woman might be trying to get her career off the ground in her younger life. So the first phase, the first act of a woman's life is, these first, oh, I think it's about 15, 16 archetypes. Then the weaver comes in. She's the second of the three fates, and she weaves the threads together that the spinner spins. And this is the more mature phases of a woman's life where life becomes more complex. And here she is likely to be several archetypes, like the priestess archetype. Well, she's an oracle, she's a healer, she's an alchemist, she's a singer, a performer, she's a mystic, I call it. She might be a yogini for all I know. She might have several of them. And, the Empress has several archetypes. And so as we develop through life into the more mature ones, we can embody more than one.
Uh-huh. And these 38 archetypes that you devise, was that something you were using, source material, or how did you come up with the 38?
Well, some of them woke me up in the middle of the night and said,
Oh,
write
oh,
me. You got to write
uh-huh.
me, like the Trailblazer.
Oh.
It was at 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and she had spoken to me in a dream. And she said, I have to be in your deck. And she wasn't on the original list I had when I sat down thinking about what archetypes I wanted to include. So some of them, just grabbed me. It's more like just looking at what women do, looking at society, looking at the different roles that are played. I've studied a lot of history and mythology in my life, so looking at some of the ancient archetypes that were lost and what
Uh-huh.
happened as a result of that, and trying to bring those back to life again. And
Uh-huh.
then also looking at the archetypes that are emerging, like the athlete. There weren't women athletes, um, hardly any prior to Title IX in 1972, when it brought money in for schools to, educate girls in athletics. And prior to
Uh-huh.
that, women athletes were few and far between.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, it's the rise of the feminine power.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's great because in the yeah, the rise of the feminine power began 60s, 70s, the rise of the feminist movement. But this is much more expansive on the different types of ways women serve, live, embody who they are.
Yeah, and what I love about this is when women work with these cards, and even men have, something awakens in them when they read about it and they go, oh, I never saw myself that way. Now I understand that, for instance, being an empath, which many might see as a liability. Oh, I'm so sensitive, I can't go out. That being an empath is actually a good skill for a leader because you
Mhm.
can sense what's going on in people, and you're more caring and compassionate because you can feel other people's feelings. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's hard to be an empath, but you can also see it as a gift rather than a curse.
Uh-huh.
So that's
And
one of the cards.
yeah, and I think the countries that rate at the top levels of the happiness scale on the World Happiness Report and have women, I think part of that leadership quality is that compassion and empath and empathy.
That's
Um,
right. And, I have a card called the Angel of Mercy, and she's the mother of compassion. But, in the masculine world, if you show mercy to the incarcerated, you're being soft on crime. If you
uh,
show mercy to the poor and say we need to balance, the money between rich and poor, well, then you're just catering to laziness. Um,
uh-huh,
there's this whole attitude that compassion is being soft,
uh-huh,
soft and squishy and weak.
uh-huh,
And that's a masculine attitude, but really to be compassionate requires great strength.
uh-huh. Yeah, that reminds me of the senatorial campaign in Pennsylvania that, just the election and John Fetterman got elected. And one of the things the Oz and the Republicans were hitting him on was when he was I think it was the lieutenant governor. He served on the parole board, he had decisions, and so he was lenient with a lot of people, with their sentences, or he had some role. So he was hit on that. Oh, you're, basically what you're saying. Oh, you're compassionate towards the incarcerated.
Yeah,
It's
you're
just,
soft on crime,
yeah, soft on
and
crime.
therefore you're going to be a weak leader.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's something we have to change in our thinking.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So could you share some cards with us on a day and talk about them?
Sure. Let's see. How about the Maestra here? I'm just picking at random.
Yeah, maybe a couple of cards. Say a little bit.
Now, I think they're coming up. You're not seeing the whole card, are you?
Is there a way to roll up, scroll up, or?
Yeah, I mean, I can scroll up and down. This is just so hard there. Oh, dear me.
No, that's you, not me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's me. Sorry about that. Um, yeah, so here's the Maestra. And here she is with her test tube and her computer and her books. And she's the teacher and the
Uh-huh.
scholar.
Uh-huh.
And, that's not a typical role where women are respected.
Uh-huh.
You've got them in the movies sometimes, and they have the glasses and the lab coat, and they're very kind of a marginal character in the movie until that moment where they take off their glasses and they let their hair down and they take their lab coat off and they're wearing something sexy underneath, and then you take notice of them. But
Mhm.
this is the really intelligent woman who's a scholar. She might be, surfing the online databases. She might be in the stacks of the library. She might be, the scientist doing experiments. She might be the historian. And, when women are that, they often, their names get left off of papers, science in science when they collaborate with men on, peer-reviewed scientific papers, often their names get left off or they put last on the list. So, just seeing the woman as a scholar, as a maestra, and the way she contributes in that. And I tell stories too of in each card is written from the point of view of I, which is the maestra speaking
Uh-huh.
directly, the she, which is some historical information or her standing in the world, and then the you, which is, when you work with this archetype, she is asking you to take on a new course of study, or, make sure your name gets on the paper, or, some piece of advice. But in the historical information here, if you look back into history, the last really famous female scholar was Hypatia. Some people say Hypatia, but it was actually pronounced Hypatia in 400 AD in Alexandria, which is now Egypt, but where the Alexandrian libraries were. And she was a famous, well-respected female scholar. But when the Christian zealots came and burned the Alexandrian libraries and knocked down the temples, they killed her, tortured her, and killed her, and dragged her through the city at the end of on the street, with a rope from a cart, something they only use for the hardened criminals. And
Uh-huh.
there has not been much recognition of women scholars in hundreds of years since then. And so it's a very hard, academia is a hard world for women to break into. 60% of college degrees are go to women now, but
Uh-huh.
in tenured faculty position, I think they only have like 37% of those roles. So
Uh-huh.
they're not getting their equal share in academia. So that's just one of them.
Mhm.
Um, close that and let me pick another one. Give me a letter of the alphabet. Maybe I'll.
Someone was asking about, is there a Trailblazer card?
There
Something
is
like
a trailblazer. She's the one that woke me up in the middle of the night, and here she is
oh, oh,
walking on the trail.
oh, look at that. Oh,
She
Trailblazer.
embarks, and she has various women behind her: Ruth Bader
Oh,
Ginsburg,
so
Amelia
cool.
Earhart, Shirley Chisholm, uh, um, Susan B. Anthony. Um, yeah, oh, this is
Rosa Parks.
a mathematician. What was her name? That was part of the moon launch. They made a movie about her called Hidden Figures. So
Oh, Hidden
these are
Figures.
women that have been trailblazers in the past. And when we have a trailblazer, we carry those women on our shoulders. We actually stand on their shoulders, but we are also becoming shoulders for someone in the future by blazing a trail.
Wow, this is great.
So, there's the Empress, and here she is. And I tried to have a whole lot of racial diversity in the
Yeah.
cards. So
Uh-huh.
we have pretty much everything that we can think of. Um,
Uh-huh.
the Empress is, her verb is I preside. In the male rule, the emperor, he rules, he calls the shots, but she presides. And that's a different quality of rulership than, commanding, right? Presiding over a meeting, presiding over a mediation, presiding over whatever it is. Um,
Mhm.
and as I researched the history of empresses, I was really surprised to find out that in the latter half of the 1800s, around 1850 to 1900 or so, two women ruled more than half the world.
Uh-huh.
And that was Queen Victoria, who ruled the British Empire for 64 years
Yeah.
until her death in 1901.
Uh-huh.
And the British Empire was about 400 million people at that time. And Empress Cixi, which is a Chinese empress, she ruled for about 50 years. She
Yeah.
brought China into the modern era. She started out as a foot-bound concubine at 16, and she married an emperor. He died. She became the empress. She brought electricity to China, the railroads. She brought them into the modern economy, and she put an end to foot binding and an end to the torture of death by 1,000 cuts. And
Uh-huh.
to keep her throne that long, she had to do some brutal things too. But who knew in that time when women were so repressed that two women ruled more than half the world for 50 years?
Uh-huh.
So I have little details like that in the she section.
Uh-huh. Oh, could you keep going? Just
Sure,
another.
sure. And then there's here's a modern archetype, the androgyne, the one
Uh-huh.
who is not necessarily female or male particularly. She might be
Uh-huh.
gender fluid, she might be trans.
Uh-huh.
It might be a man being a woman, it might be a woman being a man, it might be somebody that goes back and forth. But
Uh-huh.
this is a new emerging archetype. And yet, as you look in the history, there have been androgynes through history, and they were often seen as having special powers.
Uh,
Even some of the Christian mystics talked about androgynes.
uh-huh.
So she's an emerging, and she integrates. She's
Yeah.
integrating masculine and feminine. She follows the weaver in the deck. So the weaver weaves the threads, and she's the first weaving of masculine and feminine.
Oh, so cool. Yeah. Then I saw you had one, forgot what it was called, but it was woman politician, public servant, or you know which one I'm talking
The
about?
stateswoman.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
statesman. Is that it?
there she is.
Stateswoman.
Yeah.
State.
See, if I make this smaller, maybe, yeah, I can make it smaller and you can see it
Okay.
better.
Oh, great.
So,
Yeah.
stateswoman, she governs. And
Yeah.
the stateswoman, as I mentioned, we only have three countries that have even 50% women in their cabinets or state legislature, and
Uh-huh.
only 23, which is about 11% of female heads of state. But the stateswoman governs more as a community organizer, as getting people behind her, getting people to work together, getting people to cooperate. And we're seeing a rise of that. Of course, in this country, we only have about 25% women in Congress. I
Mhm.
haven't recounted since the recent election and seen where the numbers are, but it's about 25%. And so we want to see more women in governance, and yet to
Mhm.
realize that they govern a little differently.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And you mentioned about women, the movement, and you showed Susan B. Anthony behind the Trailblazer, and it's hard for any of us, men, women, to fathom now how long it took for women to be given the right to vote, and it was
That's right.
such a struggle and such an ordeal over the years.
And they died for that right. I mean, there
Yeah.
were women that died in the suffrage movement, and it's only 102 years ago. That when it was 1920 that women got the right to vote, and the incredible resistance that was there in giving them that.
Hmm.
And how hard they had to fight. So it's all, very recent that we've had any say in our government whatsoever. And like I say, the racism goes deep, but I think sexism can go even deeper in the fact that, emancipated slaves and then later, emancipated slaves got the right to vote before women did.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's
Not that they
it's
shouldn't have had the right to vote, but I'm just saying this is where, priorities have lied.
uh-huh. Yeah, and of course, in the Declaration of in the Declaration of Independence, it says all men are created equal. Of course,
That's right.
men. Yeah, it
That's right.
wasn't all
All men are
human
created equal.
beings.
That's right. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
there's ones like the Muse. So come on, Muse. There she is. This is the only one that's actually a statue. I talk about the nine muses of Greek mythology, but she
Uh,
inspires. And so this is, so many famous writers and musicians have said they had a muse.
uh-huh. Yeah.
And, there was some woman that was in their life that whispered in their ear and said, maybe you should write about this, or maybe you should do that, but they never get credit.
Uh-huh.
And yet
Right.
having a muse is very important for any creative effort.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Another one is the diva.
Oh.
So the diva,
Look at
when,
the pictures.
sexism was, even stronger and the goddess was really quite forbidden, this was one place where women were allowed to shine. And that's that they could be sexy on stage and they could dance and they could sing and they could sort of let the goddess out. They were priestesses in a sense, and it was acceptable. And so it was a place where the feminine, got out of her straitjacket and started, having a little more freedom to be and to express herself. And, we
Uh,
have many famous divas today, and they carry that energy they carry the feminine very strongly as leaders.
yeah. Oh, and let me add to that. Sanna Marin is the Prime Minister of Finland, and there was a scandal a couple of months ago, last year sometime, because she was at a party and she was dancing a little bit.
Oh,
Remember
right. I
that?
do
And there was
remember that.
video of it. And so, oh my God, a prime minister dancing, and of course, a woman. What's her problem?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she was letting it, like, and it wasn't like she was wild dancing, she was moving.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one is the benefactress.
Ah, such beautiful cards.
And the verb for her that we chose was I bequeath. So she gives, and I thought, what is, we don't even have a word for a money woman. For men, we have the tycoon, we have the financier, but there wasn't really a word. So when I was looking for what do we call her, and I was doing research, I realized that I learned that women, when they come into money, tend to be more generous with it. They tend to give it to causes. Mackenzie Scott, for example, who is
Right.
the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos of Amazon, has broken all records. I think in 2020 she gave away almost $6 billion, to
Mhm.
causes. So women become benefactors, and we all
Mhm.
need a benefactor. And this is, of course, the goddess Lakshmi, and so here is the woman of wealth. She's a
Yeah.
benefactress.
Yeah, so you bring up Mackenzie Scott. While she's giving out $6 billion, Jeff Bezos uses his money to blast off into space,
Yeah.
and Elon Musk uses his money to buy Twitter and just be a horrible troll.
Exactly. Think what, I think he paid 44 billion for Twitter or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
What could
Yeah.
that 44 billion do if it was put toward climate change or world hunger or any of the many, many issues that we know we have on this planet?
Mhm.
Yeah. But it was more self-aggrandizing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, of course, some of the ones we know well. Here's the lover.
Uh, uh-huh.
So, the word I chose for her is I cherish. And she may be the seductress, but she really opens the gate to love.
Uh-huh.
That, sexuality may be what draws people to the gate, but on the other side of that gate is a deeper love.
Uh-huh.
We talk about that. There's the
Yeah.
creatrix. And here I talk about how, oops, are we seeing this full
Yeah.
size now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good.
and I, put her in an evening dress on a ladder painting the sky. How women have to create while doing it in high heels and stockings and their hair just perfect. And, they've got kids and they're creating on their kitchen table while the kids are asleep. Men are given offices and a budget, to
Uh-huh.
work with. And so the creatrix is the innovator. She's the artist. She might be a musician, a dancer, a painter, a writer, but she is creating the world.
Hmm.
And that's an ancient archetype.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another ancient archetype is the alchemist.
Oh.
And of course, Jung talked about alchemy a lot, which is the, evolution of the soul. And the alchemist is trying to take, burn away the dross and come to pure gold. But it's also the cook is the alchemist, the one that plans the party with just the right people and it just works, there's a certain alchemy involved. So that's a skill that women tend to have.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I just did a big show last Saturday night in which we embodied. I had people act the parts and embody
Uh-huh.
the archetypes and memorize and act out the poems that I have on each of the cards that speak in the I voice. And so we embodied 17 archetypes out of the set of 38 and one man.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that had to be quite a great show. And you have a video clip, you said. I just want to put in the chat box how both Anodea's website and the She Rises cards. Oh, but it's not. Oh, it's not linking. So you'll have to copy that, folks. So if someone has the card, how would it work? They look at the card, there's a description, you have and there's a booklet with it.
Mhm.
How does that work, or how did
Well, here's what a card looks like. So here is the midwife, right? And what I do is I have people think about maybe something they're struggling with in their life, a place that they, want some counsel or advice or guidance, and to pick a card that, might resonate to them as they think about that problem. So the midwife is the one that helps people bring things into being. She may not produce it herself, but she helps people birth projects. So they take the card, then they can, instead of reading it out of a book where everybody has to share the book, all the writing is on the card. So the first part is the I, and it's I am the midwife. I dwell at the gate between death and life. I am the go-between, the liminal place between maiden and mother. I herald the miracle of life and ease its pain. I am the way shower between the worlds, and it goes on. So they meet the archetype. Then the she describes, like I say, some historical information. Like in this one, um, in 1915, a prominent physician described childbirth as a pathological process. And he advised giving drugs and forceps and all those things. And in the next 15 years after he proclaimed that and published and was heralded for it, infant and mother mortality increased by 41%
Mhm.
because they took midwives away from their, what they'd been doing since time began.
Mhm.
So there's historical information, and then there's the you section on the back of the card. So we have the I, the she, and then the you. And the you is like when you get the card of the midwife, you may be pregnant with possibility, trying hard to give birth. It may be, it may not be an in-flesh baby, but it could be a project, a book, a business, or even a profound change. You're helping to bring something into being. It might be midwifing the new world that we're all trying to create together. And so recognizing, that um, that is a form of leadership, but people don't get credit because they helped you birth something, but it's not their project, so they don't get credit. Like the woman you said, was supporting her man while he,
Adam Smith
Adam Smith was supporting
yeah,
him while he wrote. She was the midwife in that case, helping him
yeah,
birth his books, but she
uh-huh,
doesn't get credit.
yeah. And talking about pregnancy and childbirth, it even to this day, it's in this country, I can't say other countries, but it's seen as a medical syndrome. It's pathology still.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And you're not supposed to grow too much, and your breasts aren't supposed to sag too much. And, it's all about keeping the woman as a maiden, because that's the ideal that men have. And, they don't want to see her as a mother. They don't want to see her as a crone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and what would be, a goal perhaps of these cards in your mind, having produced these cards as
Yeah.
people get them? Have you thought, I don't know if you've thought
Oh,
about,
sure. Of course. Of
yeah,
course. Well, to awaken these superpowers, if you will, in women. And what
yeah,
I've seen as I've worked with women using these cards is just amazing. I mean, yesterday I delivered a couple boxes to somebody that hadn't made it to the event and had ordered the cards. And she said, "Could you bring them by?" And I said, "Sure." And she's playing bridge with three other women. And I said, "Well, let me show you what I do with them." And, they read the card and then they stand up and they speak the I part. And they were just shaking and crying and, so they were really moved by it. And they said, "I never really realized how important that aspect was to who I am."
mhm,
And this is what I hear over and over again. So it's awakening a kind of power in women that has been unrecognized. And for men, I find men often cry when they read these. I thought I was just doing this for women, but men come to my circles and they get a lot out of it. it reclaims something in their feminine, or it
Mhm.
reclaims something that they have not recognized in the women they love, their wives, their daughters. Um, it restores some kind of wholeness to people, and they feel it on a somatic level, they feel it on an intellectual level, they feel it in their heart.
Mhm. Yeah, men carry a lot of pain of trying to be that
That's right.
man.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah. And there's that whole concept of the toxic male
that's right.
syndrome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the male archetypes are, there's nothing wrong with them, they're necessary, the protector and the army chief and the CEO and all that. Those are good archetypes. It's just that they're taking up the whole stage.
Mhm.
And there's many other forms of leadership for both men and women.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Um, so do you think the world could our world be different? What not I shouldn't it's not even a question. This is actually a statement, but I'll ask it to you as a question. Our You would say our world would be different if these archetypes were recognized by men, by the male establishment?
I think so. Yeah. So what about the CEO that recognizes the value of the shepherdess on his team and
Mhm.
really rewards her for that?
Uh-huh.
And honors her, the value of the midwife on the team who is helping to birth it, and giving her a little more credit. The value of the intellect. I have another one that's the observer. She's the quiet one, but she's
Uh,
watching everything, and she employs witness consciousness. So she sees, she has a wisdom that is seldom sought because she's quiet, but then
mhm.
seeking her out and saying, oh, this person is valuable. She's a valuable
Uh-huh.
employee. She's a valuable friend. She's a valuable person to have on my team.
Mhm. Yeah. And all those talking about CEOs, all those corporations that left this country, moved to the global south where they could pay people $1 a day and just destroyed so many jobs in the
That's
process. That was all just that male energy, all about short-term vision, not even vision, but shareholder value.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
see that as leadership. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had a performance, your kind of the release of the cards on Saturday, big performance. And you have a video and you videoed it, but you made a small clip, right?
I did. I chose the priestess. She was it was a very powerful turning point in the show. And she was in this middle of the second act, and she spoke the poem that's on the card, um,
Uh-huh.
and memorized it, of course, and acted it.
Yeah.
So if I can share again, I'll
Yeah.
play that clip
And
for
then we
about
got a
4
bunch
minutes.
of questions, comments that came in the chat box. Someone raised their hand. So, after you show
Okay,
the
then
clip.
we'll go to that after we show
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you seeing it?
Yep.
I am the priestess. I am the living conduit of the goddess. My duty is to serve her above all else. Through me, she remains alive in the hearts and minds of her people. I am the guardian to her mysteries. I am the mistress of magic. I am the keeper of her temple, and I am a weaver of the ways and a guardian to her mysteries. I come to you as maiden, as mother, and crone. I am the oracle, uttering words of the divine. I am the alchemist with her scents and potions. Always the midwife standing between the worlds. I stand at the threshold between the unknown and the known, guarding her mysteries with my life. Once I was revered, you may remember. I walked the lands freely. I blessed the animals and the herds thrived. I blessed the crops and there was plenty. I blessed the soldiers as they went off to war. And I loved them when they returned. But after they raped me, after they destroyed my temple, after the goddess's words were forbidden from my lips, the herds began to get sickly. You know the story. The crops began to fail. The springs began to dry up. And I was blamed and shamed for the chaos that had followed. I was punished. I was exiled. I was tortured. I was burned at the stake. Until now, I lie in the earth, the deep and silent, dark earth, forgotten. 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 But I did not die, for I am the goddess and she is eternal. I live in you. I am within every single one of you. And I am awakening and I am rising up from the underworld. Have you seen me? Do you feel me? I am here, picking up her chalice. I am here, singing her praises once again, dancing in the cycle of life once again, uttering her prayers. I am here beating her drum and dancing the cycle of life. I am her holy chalice. And I am here making the world sacred once again. Making the world sacred once again. Making your world sacred once again. I am priestess and I serve.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, I'm sorry I was 3,000 miles away that night.
Yeah, it was quite a show. We had the lover, we had the spinner, the weaver, and the cutter. The cutter was the queen of death. She ended the show. I was the visionary. We had the
Uh-huh.
healer, the empress, the dancer, um,
Uh-huh.
the mother, the maiden,
Oh,
the
yeah.
protectress. Oh, she was fierce. She had a sword and was all
Oh,
war paint on her face. And then the shamana was she was in the nature, uh, beating the drum and doing the shamanic thing. And the angel of
oh,
mercy had wings.
oh. I'm in awe of you, Anodea.
Well, I grew up in a
Bow
theater
down.
family, so I love to bring this stuff to life. But that's one of the things about the feminine. It is not this black and white suits and ties, everybody look alike and follow.
Uh,
The feminine is color and pageantry and song and dance and wonderful food cooked and love and play. We had a mistress of play who was a comedian.
uh-huh.
So, we had all the different archetypes, a wide range to give people a taste of what it's like when you bring this to life.
Yeah. Yeah. God, we need this to become a movement. And oh, yeah, it's enough of this patriarchy, the warring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that we want matriarchy, we want a partnership.
Yeah, I want integration.
To come to the global heart, we need masculine and feminine working in partnership. That's what
Uh-huh.
it is to be parents of a new world, to be
Uh-huh.
parents of the future. We need to co-parent together. And,
Uh-huh.
I started off talking about Chicken Little, talking about how the sky is falling. And the sky is falling because women have this glass ceiling over them and they can't break through it to reach the sky. So we need to hold up our half of the sky, but we need to break through the glass ceiling in order to do it.
Yeah, the yin and the yang. Yeah. So I'll go to the questions or the chat box and see some people just made statements. Like Chantal said, I'm physically female, but been told by many times have masculine qualities. So that, just like men will have feminine qualities, women will have. Nothing wrong with that.
No, and it's why I put in the androgyne, because we can be anywhere on that spectrum between masculine and feminine. And the old masculine world has it very much, this is women, this is how women behave, this is men. There's something wrong with you if you don't fit into that, stereotype. But this is trying to, open that up with a lot of different expressions.
Yeah. And Brian writes, the rise of the divine feminine has been on the rise ever since Earth Day. Women increasing their representation in Congress. Kamala Harris as VP, helping men and women recognize the importance of harmonizing both divine masculine and divine feminine energies will help heal the current imbalance.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have to get it on an archetypal level before it filters through into behavior and culture and values.
Yeah. Yeah. So the archetype is like, Jung wrote a lot about the subconscious. So it's that inner wisdom or that subconscious, the psyche at that level.
That's right.
Yeah. And he wrote, or put in quotes, in the words, well, this is a link to a Harvard Business Review article, but in the words of one senior manager, the typical high achieving woman childless at midlife has not made a choice, but a quote, creeping non-choice, unquote. Oh, yeah, that's that business mentality.
That's right. Yeah. And many women don't know they have these choices. They've been stripped of it. They've been stripped of their humanity in a way, because they've been stripped of their powers as women that bring an important thing to the table to mix with what men carry.
Yeah. And Lisa, we got a lot of chats coming in, so I'll keep going through them. Lisa writes, interesting too, the way the female warrior can embody and display characteristics unlike what are thought of for the male warrior. Women owning their capacity for being fierce while being principled and kind.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And Judith writes, beautiful presentation. Anodea, I seem to recognize women from our community as models. Is that so? I think Judith lives in your area because she had mentioned
she does. She does.
Yeah.
Hi, Judith.
Yeah. So.
Some of the people in the cards are real people that we know, and some are not. In the show, the healer card is a woman that was a big member of our community, and she died a few months ago. So I let the stage be empty, and we read her card off stage while we did a slideshow of her from our life. So that was Celestine Starr, and we honored her, did a tribute to her in the show with that.
Yeah. And then Anne writes that Governor Hochul is the first woman governor of New York State, liberal New York State, and she became governor because the governor Andrew Cuomo resigned, but she just got reelected. So yeah, first woman governor finally in New York State. In Massachusetts, actually, I think it's the first time just now that a woman was elected governor for Massachusetts.
Yeah, we're getting some firsts. Women are stepping in. People are starting to get used to the idea. And I think we need a lot of that before people are ready to entertain a woman president. It's like they can't get their heads around it because they haven't seen women in politics enough. But as I see more and more women in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, in legislature, or even in other countries as heads of state, they get a little more used to the idea that you could consider a woman in that role. And it takes a while because these are really deep-seated prejudices that we're blind to.
Yeah. And Judith again writes, alchemist is one of my favorites. She combines with healer and herbalist to me as well.
Yeah.
Brian writes, thank you for creating the deck, Anodea. I ordered your deck on Tuesday. So
Oh, wonderful. Great.
yeah. And
Yeah,
I put the link to the cards that in the chat box for anyone who wants
so
to
you
know
can
how.
order them at sherisescards.com. And I just got the video of the event today and it hasn't been edited. I pulled that clip out, but when I get it edited, the whole video will be up on the website for free. And you can, at least pretend you're there. And some of
Yeah.
it, we came together. We didn't rehearse as a whole, the whole cast rehearsing together with the musicians until that day. We had a dress rehearsal that afternoon and a performance that night. And we could have used a lot more rehearsal, but
Yeah.
I worked with each person individually over Zoom, and then we all showed up and put it together.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it was just amazing.
Yeah.
Let's see. And Judith also writes, love, mother, and crone, maiden is loved as well, yet at maturing years of times around the sun, I value deeply sacred mother and crone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And let's see. Brian writes, just like the hat rack of roles people wear, channeling the energy of the role embodied in the card provides the flow state for that creative energy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
For that
So
creative energy to flow through you. So let's say you're going to sit down to write. Maybe you want to take the Muse card out and read it. Maybe you want to take the creatrix and get that creative spark. Maybe doing scholarly work and you want the Maestra. So you can, pull these out, you can carry them around, you've got all the information in it. Yeah.
Oh, so that's a good point. That I'm glad Brian brought that up so that you could answer that the cards, the very pragmatic aspect of the cards to pull it up whatever direction you're feeling like.
Yeah, and you can carry it around in your pocket. You can put it on your altar, tape it to your mirror.
Yeah. And Sheetal asks a logistical point. Will there be a digital set as well that you can shuffle and pull on phone or tablets?
There is, and it's called, there's a app called Deckable. I'll write it in the chat, DECKIBLE. And you can get the app for free. And it is an app for card decks. And I have submitted my deck into the app, and so you can get it for $10, and you can have it on your phone or your iPad, and it'll shuffle for you, and it'll give you a spread. You can choose 5 cards or 3 cards, and you can flip them over, and they have a place to journal. So you can get it on. You can get it on your phone.
Yeah.
In fact, every day I go on Deckable. I say, what card is going to come up for me today?
Oh, so cool. Oh, that was good. Sheetal asked that. Brian.
I wrote that to you only. Let me put that to everyone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And
I will be doing courses on this,
yeah, that'll be
training
great.
women to facilitate the kind of circles I've been doing with it.
Yeah.
How to facilitate other women and men, I've been amazed at the reaction of men. They love this stuff.
Yeah.
They cry, they shake,
wow. Well, judging by all the chat messages coming in, so I've got to keep going here. Men need to judging by just saying that, like you're saying, it's men also. You're getting a lot of people engaging. So Brian writes, men need to recognize the soft, receiving, listening, feminine energy inside themselves as part of the emotional resilience that's healthy for all genders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I'd say, and of course, any kind of statement like this isn't true of everybody, but in general, women need to rise and men need to deepen.
Mm-hmm.
Men need to find their way down to the earth, to their bodies, to their emotions, to, find the depth of their soul, and women need to rise up, and in that we'll have more balance. Not that women are going to be higher than men, but it's just men already have the height. They want to add the depth. Women already have a lot of that depth. They want to add the height.
Right. Yeah. And Lisa writes, uninhibited by nature, but suppressed by poisonous conventions.
Ooh, that's really very well put. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, so that was the Diva card, right? Was that the one where letting
she's wild. Yeah. We have her in the show for sure.
Yeah, Bobby says she just hopes you'll repeat the performance at another time.
Yeah.
Let's see. Judith writes, yes, all an integration of masculine, feminine, our indigenous relations always recognize a continuum of gender, some call other spirits.
That's right. Or two-spirit.
Yeah. Let's see. Someone writes, Sumit writes, Anodea, this work is so powerful. Thank you for this deep, immersive work that you've put together. You mentioned drawing from ancient texts. I can't help thinking about 9 forms of goddess Durga, a popular narrative in the Indian ancient mythology, which I've been drawn to and learned from. But your work goes way beyond that, as composite, holistic, and also relevant to the current times. I work in the space of gender equality and currently in the midst of a project of getting more women in corporate boards, leadership positions in India, where Sumit took this, is online from.
Yeah.
Your work here will be immensely useful for taking forward my mission. Extremely grateful.
Yeah, and in India, that balance is really needed. Although in India, they have had an unbroken line of goddess worship. They never lost it. Kali has been Kali and Durga and Saraswati and Lakshmi, and they've all been, worshipped without stopping. They didn't have this, the goddess is forbidden from your lips that Christianity brought.
Yeah. And Chital also asked, do you have a course or book to help men tap into their feminine side as they want to include coaching men in depression, as there's been a rise of male suicide?
Wow. Yeah. I don't, but I may follow this set of cards with a set of cards of male archetypes. I'll see where, this just came out. I mean, it came from, I got my first printed cards from the printer the day before Thanksgiving. So it's really just fresh, and I've got to, put this out, and we'll see, but maybe it'll be followed by male archetypes.
Yeah, that would be great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lynn writes, such important work. I've been working with bringing through the divine feminine. I like the focus on women's leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are ways that women lead, and we need to recognize them.
Yeah. And we were talking, I wanted to bring this up. This is a good time. We were talking before we went on, Anodea, about the when the prime ministers of Finland and New Zealand got together recently last week, and there was a video that went viral. Sanna Marin, Finland, and Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, both around the same age, late 30s, early 40s. So they had a summit. They got together in New Zealand, and then at the press conference afterwards, Jacinda Ardern was standing there, and a male reporter asked her, "Oh, did you get together? Just because you're like the same age, or you're both women?" And it was like such a inappropriate question, and she handled it very well.
She said, no, we got together because we were both prime ministers of countries.
Yeah. It's like,
yeah, as if they're going to get together and talk about their hairstyles,
I know. Yeah. So yeah, I thought of that as Lynn's writing. I like to focus on women's leadership. There's still a lot of education on that subject to be done.
That's right.
Yeah. So so we've gone through
and that reporter probably didn't even know that that was a condescending comment. It probably didn't even occur to them. It's just, that's the category, that's the pigeonhole that they have for women. The news would focus on Hillary Clinton's hemline, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her hair, and
her lipstick.
And her lipstick, completely ignoring the very important and good work they're doing. And then when you have somebody like why am I blanking? She had a plan for that. Elizabeth
Warren.
Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, excuse me. I don't know why I drew a blank on that. Where she's got plans for everything. I mean, that's what we need. We need a plan to be able to carry it out. But people couldn't relate to that because that's not their role that they see women in.
Yeah. She's like one of the smartest women around, smartest persons, not women. Lisa writes, doesn't the sad news about Celine Dion's stiff person syndrome diagnosis represent a surreal twist of fate? Her vocal cords are even affected. I don't know.
I don't even know anything about that.
No.
Yeah.
No. And Cindy writes, I'm so excited I was able to be here tonight. Sad I wasn't able to attend your event. I'm looking forward to seeing the full video and can't wait to have a deck in my hands to guide me and inspire me. Such a beautifully empowering deck. Yeah, I think we, even through doing this virtually, I think we all got the sense of it between us talking about it, you showing the visuals of the cards, and then the video. Yeah, it was.
And these cards can make great Christmas presents for the women in your life.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That'll be,
or
yeah.
for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll put that. Well, maybe I have the chat still. I'm going to put the website.
Yeah, sherises.cards.com.
Yeah, there's the link, so you can just click on it. Just if you just want to read more about it. Yeah, what a great service to humanity this is, and the shift that's needed is so imperative, as the men just keep warring with their toys. And
you know, the men play a very important role. I really don't want to diminish that.
Totally.
You know, men have held up their half of the sky for a long time, and they've worked hard, and they've provided many things that we, you know, they've provided the railroads and the roads and the hospitals and, you know, the cars, and, you know, the men have done a lot. It's just that we have been lopsided, and now we need to make room on the stage for the women to bring in what's been missing in the conversation. It's been missing. It's like you know, you're trying to make a painting with black and white paint. Let's bring in some color. You know, and it becomes a whole different painting when you can bring in some color and some shape and some, you know, curves instead of straight lines. Not that there's anything wrong with straight lines. You know, we want the combination, and there is the creation.
Yeah. A question on Anodea. We talked about women being given the right to vote just 100 years ago in the United States. Do you know about other countries and the status in the past, the status of women's right to vote? Is it a recent occurrence?
Around the same time. It was around the same time, you know,
for many countries.
For many countries, for the European countries. Some were a little bit before, some were a little bit afterwards, but there was something that was ripening around that time.
Oh, so it wasn't just the United States that denied women the right to vote. Yeah. Just
I mean, I have a quote in the little booklet from Richard Nixon. This is one that is worth reading. Let me find it. Where he said, and this was, you know, in the Nixon era, what was that, 40 years ago or something, not that long
50.
ago.
Yeah.
If I can read this for a moment. Give me a second. So, you know, while he was waging a senseless war in Vietnam, while he was lying to the American public, and right before he was humiliated into resignation, he said, "I don't think a woman should be in any government job whatsoever. The reason why I do is mainly because they are erratic and emotional. Men are erratic and emotional too, but the point is a woman is more likely to be. I'm not for women in any job. I don't want any of them around. Thank God we don't have any in the cabinet."
Wow. That's, oh, unbelievable. Yeah.
And
none of us would be walking on this earth if it wasn't for women.
That's right. Yeah. And so, like I say, it's not to dishonor men, it's to bring women up, let them rise so we can work together and co-create a new world. And that's my speaking as the visionary. I'm on the visionary card.
Amen.
And I was the visionary in the show too. Yeah.
Or maybe I should say a woman. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. A woman. Just like the word history
That's
perhaps it
right.
should be
It's his
her
story.
story. Yeah, his
Right.
story, her
That's
story.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And the written word and history really, what we consider history goes back about to the start of patriarchy,
Hmm.
which there is really a lot before, but it wasn't written down. It was in statues and, archaeology and things like that we find it. But with the beginning of writing, and writing is more, right out left brained. And so it's a more masculine aspect. There's been a lot of research into that. But anyway, we should probably
Yeah.
wind this up.
Since we got one last comment coming out, we'll take that and then we can wrap it up. Judith writes, men culturally have been so this is a really thoughtful comment. Men culturally have been horribly abused as well. Their abuse is sometimes less visible, yet has affected all of us. They have been left without the resources of mutuality that we as women have more easily.
I think that's a very astute comment, and I think that's very true. And and it's like I don't blame men. We are all victims of this period in history where we've been raised a certain way with certain values. We're coming out of that. The men have been, programmed, and the women have been programmed. But women have each other in a way, in a kind of intimacy where we can talk about our feelings, and men often don't have that. So they're much more isolated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's troublesome.
And it's troublesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, Anodea, this is beautiful. And yeah, we could go on much longer, but we're here we are. Now we're in 20
Time to
minutes.
let people go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
they can get
thank you
the
so
cards
much.
and you can begin to work with them, and they can, do circles with their friends. And I'll be at
Uh-huh.
Apollo June 2nd to 4th doing a workshop on this. And I'll probably
Oh,
do something online. I haven't created it yet. And
uh-huh.
I was just getting to this point, getting the cards done, the website up, the event launched, and recovering from that. And now I'll see what
Yeah.
I can make out of this.
Yeah. So we'll hear more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I wish
Thank you, Michael,
yeah, thank you,
for giving me
Anodea.
a chance to talk about this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, so this is our final show of the year. So thank you, everyone, and I wish everyone a happy holiday season.
And let's
And
tell them what we got coming up next year.
yeah, we already have programs through January and February. January 19th with Gerard Senahi, who's doing an amazing job with education. He's going to talk about the role of education and democracy. And then in February, early February, we have a woman, Mary Adams, who's an environmental activist in England and a leader in civil disobedience. And then in the end of February, we have the documentary filmmaker Yoruba Richin, who has her latest documentary feature film is called The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, and it's on streaming on Peacock, the Peacock streaming station. So if anyone, we'll send emails out, but if anyone has Peacock, you can watch it leading up to it. It's a great film. I've seen it, and I'm really excited that Yoruba was willing to be our guest. And then Bill McKibben, we're hoping maybe in the spring he'll be on, and that will be quite an honor. So
we got some good things lined up.
yeah. So
stay tuned.
Yeah, so we will see everyone again.
Okay. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays, solstice, Hanukkah, whatever you Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate
And
for the winter holidays, and a Happy New Year.
Yeah. All right. Peace out, everyone. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Anodea.